The NBA offseason is in full swing. Yesterday, we saw another massive trade go down when we finally saw the Atlanta Hawks break up their backcourt duo of Trae Young and Dejounte Murray. And they sent Dejounte Murray to the New Orleans Pelicans in exchange for Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels, and 2 future first-round picks, one of them being the Lakers 2025 first, and a 2027 first-round pick swap from the Milwaukee Bucks. So basically, whoever gets the worst pick between the Milwaukee Bucks and New Orleans Pelicans, pretty sure that is from the Jrue Holiday trade. So yeah, honestly, when I saw that trade package and the details there, I was like, that's all Atlanta really got, but pretty much that is what Dejounte Murray's trade value has been worth over the last couple of months. And honestly, you got to give props for the San Antonio Spurs selling Dejounte Murray at his absolute highest point, getting 4 first-round picks from Atlanta, 3 of them being pretty much unprotected, 2 being an unprotected pick swap, or excuse me, 1 being an unprotected pick swap. And then he spends 2 years in Atlanta, their first-round exit to Boston in the 2023 season, and then this past season, they had their plethora of injuries, but they didn't even make it out of the play-in tournament. And that was a talented roster. That was definitely more talented than some of the teams that ended up, I think, making the playoffs or advancing in the play-in tournament for sure. So we're going to break down this trade, what I think the future is going to happen for both these sides, give a letter grade for each thing. We're going to start off with the New Orleans Pelicans, because the Pelicans are definitely in more of a win-now mindset than the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, we all thought that this offseason, like, Brandon Ingram was going to get traded, and Woj reported today that Brandon Ingram and his agent Jeff Schwartz would like to actually get an extension done with New Orleans, but now with the new CBA, and now there's so many restrictions, if you go over the salary cap into the first apron, into the second apron, they're not going to really be able to afford that, because they're paying Zion Williamson a max extension, still paying CJ McCollum a lot of money right now. They're going to be paying Dejounte Murray his extension, which is about to kick in. They'd like to re-sign Trey Murphy, they said as well, who could be a restricted free agent in the 2025 offseason. And you're going to give Brandon Ingram $50 million? That is tough to do, and that's probably what Ingram can get from a team on the open market eventually. It could start at $43 million. It could ascend up to $50 million by the end of it. And I'm sure teams like Philadelphia, Golden State, even Detroit would be really interested, Sacramento as well, in Brandon Ingram. So if I had my prediction, I still think Brandon Ingram gets traded, but I'm going to talk about maybe a reality or a scenario in which he doesn't, because this Pelicans team, on paper, if they don't trade Brandon Ingram, it's actually really solid, because at the 1, now you have Dejounte Murray, who I think could be a ball stopper at times. You can actually perform a little bit in the clutch, and I don't think he's a complete difference maker, but he's an upgrade on what they've had. He's a better point guard than CJ McCollum. Now you have CJ playing a little bit of an off-ball role at the 2 spot. You're still paying him $30+ million a year, so I do believe that McCollum is going to start. For now, you have Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson as your front court duo, which is really nice still. That is. And then obviously you can do Zion with his hybrid stuff at the 5, hybrid stuff as a point guard, which they experimented with last year, and it worked out a ton. Now the big weakness for them right now is their rim protection, their center depth, because Jonas Valanciunas is a free agent. Unless you can get him back on a 1-year cheaper deal, probably not going to come back. That makes sense financially for both parties. And they have Yves Missi, right? They have Yves Missi, who can maybe go. He's a 21st overall pick. You're asking a lot for him. He can't space the floor. Honestly, he has a raw feel for the game, but I think he'll be a nice backup center next year. And obviously, Larry Nance was in this trade as well. Off the bench, you did trade away Dyson Daniels, but he wasn't much offensively so far in his career. Still a good defender, but you have Jose Alvarado, who's a better defender than Dyson Daniels. You have Herb Jones, who was a top 5 defender in the league last year. You could say he was the 3rd best defender behind Gobert and Wemby, an all-defensive first-team caliber wing. You also have Trey Murphy, who they want to pay a lot of money to, and when he's healthy and on, he's one of the best shooters in the game, at least at the wing position. And I'm sure they're going to lose Najee Marshall in free agency, but that's a really good Pelicans squad. They obviously need a big man. I don't know if that would come via trade. Obviously, trading McCollum for a big man would do wonders for you right now. I don't know if there's really a center on the market that you can get that done financially. And who really wants CJ McCollum at this point of his career on that contract? He hasn't proven to really elevate any teams, at least over the last 5 years. So I don't really think that'd be worth it for other teams. So I think that's a good team. You're relying a lot on Yves Missi. You're asking him to have like a Derek Lively type run in the first half of next year. And then obviously at the deadline, you can maybe acquire your Daniel Gafford or something like that, because they still have draft picks. This was from pretty much the Anthony Davis trade and the Jrue Holiday trade. They still have all their first round picks pretty much. So they can still have more flexibility trade wise. And I do think that this Pelicans team on paper is, I honestly think, on paper, the 6th best team in the West, because I still think the top 4 next year are clear-cut: Denver, OKC, Dallas, and Minnesota. And then I think Memphis is right outside those 4. And then I think New Orleans, I like a little bit more on paper right now than I do above Sacramento, Golden State, both LA teams even, and Phoenix as well. So the West is a gauntlet. It's tough. And is it worth it to try to compete next year if you're really not going to get a complete difference maker? Because are you better than the Thunder? Maybe not. But then again, they played the Thunder in the playoff series. They did lose, but they were without Zion Williamson. And now you added Dejounte Murray, and then maybe you could experiment more with just bruising front court inside with Yves Missi and Zion Williamson. It could work out. Now, obviously, they could trade Brandon Ingram, which seems more likely. They could get a big man back in that trade, which they should probably do. But honestly, recouping some of the draft capital that you gave up in the Murray trade, I think will be fine. Because you're going to move Ingram, which is going to sting, but you're expecting a lot from Trey Murphy, which could happen. You have Herb Jones still. I forgot to mention Jordan Hawkins as well before, who had a solid rookie season. You have enough on the perimeter for Zion to do his thing, CJ McCollum to be your third, fourth scoring option, Dejounte Murray to hopefully do his thing. You're investing a lot into Yves Missi, and the return you get for Ingram should still be pretty solid. You should still get 1 to 2 good rotational pieces and 2 first-round picks. Sacramento offers you Harrison Barnes and Kevin Huerter. I mean, I don't love that return specifically for New Orleans because you don't really need those 2 players specifically, but if you can reroute them, get some big man help, and you're going to get some nice unprotected first-round picks. Philadelphia could give you B-Ball Paul and a lot of unprotected first-round picks, which could be appealing to them if they just kind of wanted salary relief there because of the apron stuff that they could have to worry about. So it's going to be a very interesting couple of days for New Orleans, deciding if they're going to trade Brandon Ingram or they're going to keep him around, and either way, I'm intrigued to see what they end up doing. As for the Atlanta Hawks, oh man, so this team was in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021 with the core of Trae Young, John Collins, DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Huerter, and it's been going downhill since. They basically lost in round number 1 in 2022 to the Miami Heat, lost in round 1 to the Boston Celtics in 2023, and didn't even make the playoffs at all in 2024. And the last 2 years were with Dejounte Murray, their big splash in the 2022 offseason. And him and Trae Young had pretty much a losing record together. It wasn't great whatsoever. And they knew they had to trade away Dejounte Murray rather than Trae Young. Obviously, I thought Trae Young would net a larger return, but Bobby Marks on ESPN said during the draft that Trae Young's value is not what it was 2 years ago. And Dejounte Murray would actually fetch a larger return because of Trae Young's defensive deficiencies, his large contract looming, and his current large contract. So I was kind of shocked. I don't know if I'd agree with that because Trae Young is arguably their best player since Dominique freaking Wilkins. So I wouldn't want to see Atlanta really think about trading him unless it's to San Antonio, because in the Dejounte Murray trade, they gave up their 2025 first-round pick, 26 and 27. One of those is a pick swap, and you can't afford to tank. Kind of like why the Brooklyn Nets were so hesitant in trading Mikal Bridges. They couldn't trade him because they couldn't tank. They didn't have their draft capital. Same with Atlanta. Unless you're getting all your first-round picks from San Antonio back, then I wouldn't think about trading Trae Young. It's not worth it. So I guess you just try to hope you're around the 6 to 10 seed. The East is still wide open. Now DeJounte's in the West. Like, the West is so much more talented than the East. This Hawks team, if everything clicks, if it's a healthy season, they have a good head coach, they could be the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference. That could definitely go their way for sure if Trae Young is fully healthy for the year. You have nice wings still in Bogdan Bogdanovic and DeAndre Hunter. Maybe they get Sadiq Bey back on a 1-year deal. He plays in the second half of next year. You have the number 1 overall pick, Zachary Reese-Shea, who you hope can contribute right away as the number 1 overall pick. They got Jalen Johnson, who was a breakout stud last year at your power forward spot, and that's such an exciting piece to have. I'm still high on Kobe Buffkin from the 2023 class as a backup guard. Now with DeJounte out of the fold, we could see him play a little bit more. Maybe they think they can get a lot out of Dyson Daniels. Great defender, but still needs to improve offensively. And you have 2 solid centers in Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu, and Ed and Larry Nance right now just for even more depth. They picked up Nikola Jurisic on round 2 of the draft, and now you have some more draft capital as well to work with. You have the Lakers first-round pick next year, which could end up in the teens. You have the Pelicans or Bucks pick in 27. No idea what those could be like, but they're probably not going to be, I think, in the late 20s. I think those can be in the teens as well. You never know. So the Hawks do have a solid-looking future. It's not perfect, but the big thing looming over them is what they do with Trae Young this offseason. I wouldn't trade Trae Young unless, like I said, it's to San Antonio. You get your picks back, and then you enter into a proper rebuild. But you got to compete with Brooklyn, who's trying to rebuild. You got to compete with Washington, who's trying to rebuild. And even Charlotte, kind of in a mini rebuild as well. So I think you got to figure out what you want to do in the near term and the long term, and does that involve Trae Young? And if you keep him around, you hope Reese-Shea could be a good complementary piece. You hope Dyson Daniels or Kobe Buffkin, one of those guys, could be a good number 2. Maybe you still stay alive at the trade deadline, but you could still trade a Bogdan Bogdanovic or Clint Capella for even more draft capital down the line, and you can replace them in the aggregate. Because I want to believe in this front office. It's pretty dope that Landry Fields and Kyle Korver are running the show, 2 guys I grew up watching. Obviously, I'm a Knicks fan. Loved watching Landry Fields and in New York. And I like Quinn Snyder as a head coach. And it's cool when Atlanta is good. Like Trae Young was like the villain to at least the Knicks in 2021. Like that was really cool. They upsetted the 1-seeded 76ers in round number 2. That was a fun team. It's obviously looked a little bit different since. I'm not sure if there's more moves on the way. I could definitely see it. Maybe breaking up the big man duo with the Kungwu and Clint Capella. But yeah, I don't know. You guys in the comments, you can let me know if I'm going to give letter grades out for these. I'm going to give the Pelicans a B+. I thought this was a really solid deal for Dejounte Murray. I don't think it cost them too much. And if you were going to move on from Brandon Ingram anyway, I'm all for going out and getting a point guard in Dejounte Murray, which is a massive upgrade for your roster. As for Atlanta, I'm going to give this a B. It's pretty much just because the Dejounte Murray experiment failed there, which is a shame, but I want to give them props for moving on from him and not trying to go out one more year and experiment with this, and you're just going to end up going 39-43, and it's just another year of disappointment. So this was definitely a shocker. I mean, we all kind of expected Dejounte Murray to get traded, and New Orleans was a favorite, but just being like kind of late afternoon yesterday, a little bit of a shocker at the time. You guys can let me know what you guys think of the trade in the comments below. If you guys do enjoy these NBA Talk episodes, I would appreciate it if you drop the thumbs up. You'll have a rebuild out today with Dejounte Murray on the Pelicans, and I'll catch you all there. Peace.